All right, beautiful people. I'm going to do a review of an album with you, Michael Posner. And its deal here is that, um, first of all, I didn't like this album at first, and I'm going to do a review of reviews because I think it's apt. What did I not like? I like Posner for being fun, right? I took a pill and a visa. Um, we know I'm cooler than that, right? To do, cooler than me. Cooler than me. All right, you think you're cooler? Yeah. So it's a fun album when it's got pop, right? I think of him writing Sugar for Adam Levine and Maroon 5, but you don't think of him necessarily as a guy that's taking a walk across America from Asbury, New Jersey to the Pacific Coast down in California. 3,000 miles after he lost his father, 2017, 18, lost his friend, Avicii, the DJ. And this piece is really that. So the mixtape here, we share the journey and keep going. So we all know him from that, right? And we got the remix in 2015 from that song that kind of went big and viral if you're in the pop scene. But what I thought was interesting in this review is that this breaks it down a couple different ways. So the mixtape comes out in August. This is back in the day. This was actually written, this particular piece, in 2019. So it comes out in August and actually dropped in October, sorry. But he basically gets bit by a rattlesnake in Colorado, walking across America. Who wants to do this? Well, somebody wants to clear the head, right? And somebody who lost two friends, maybe, especially his dad and his friend. So here he gets bit by a rattlesnake, almost loses everything, loses his life, has to be hospitalized, and has to rehab himself back. And what's it about? I mean, it's about his processing of life and him coming out of moments that are very popish into life that's more reflective. So the mood space is definitely that. And this in this particular review, I think it did a good job of giving us the who, what, where, and why. It's 52 minutes. He asks you in the introduction to listen to it without interruption. And I have to say personally, I was a little skeptical of that. And there was another review that said, hey, narratively, it doesn't make a difference. True, kind of does not make a difference. But if you do listen to it in one sweep and you listen to it a few times and you spot it in, you start to kind of rhythm in some ways with the piece. If you listen to it once, it's going to sound like a mixtape. What's a mixtape? It's more raw, and it brings in friends, and it feels like it's more homegrown. It doesn't have a lot. He lays in a layer of synth, he lays in a layer of beats. Geez, it's auto-generated stuff. Doesn't feel polished like an album, doesn't have the thrust and the money and the marketing and the movement as an album often has. But maybe that's the charm. Maybe it feels like I'm getting into a little space with him in his diary, and it has that, as many reviewers notice. In this case, I love the way they go through the project bit by bit. You may look at it if you want for yourself, if you want to get in a little bit more. But one way to break down a song and one way to think about this for your project as you do this reflection, not necessarily just on Posner, but I'm on what is a mixtape and what is an album, is to kind of use this as a reference point, in other words, for your overall project, but also for this extra credit project for the A's, to think about what about needs to be polished. Because a lot of times we think so much that music has to have an edge to it, right? It's got to be on. Well, it does on a technical note, but on a personal note, it becomes something else. And this day and age of playlists, maybe this becomes a pocket playlist, something that you play in certain mood spaces that allows you to similarly reflect with him. Personal take overall is that it's a beautiful bit of poetry. It goes kitsch at times. Sometimes the lyrics are truly, as one critic said, corny. But it's one of those things that grew on me because it was so earnest. And I felt like the man still was working stuff. And I think that's where it goes. All right, so let's do a quick hop through mixtape review. As I said, that's one review, breaking it by bit, would kind of recommend. This one was more of an overall. What makes it, what does it mean to find yourself, and your true self? And that's kind of what Posner does wrestle through. And it goes for that thesis jugular, and it was just that. It was released last year in October. And The Walk Across America, and an intimate look at his sense of meaning. So definitely, I think that's true. And used to put a target on every cute face and keep Plan B pills in my suitcase. You'll see a lot of drops there. some hip hop influences. He brings in Wiz Khalifa and Ty Dolla and a couple others. So we definitely get a feel that he has company. Sometimes some people felt that one of the reviews is that Wiz bodied him well in that piece, meaning he took the stage. Interesting comment. Could almost see it possibly in that piece, in that particular cut in the album. There's 16 tracks. You can see there was a lot of popping off in here. It just didn't have the consistency or impact of previous material. And I would say, okay, yeah, some of the tracks still solid. Here we go. Half baked, underproduced, underwritten, incoherent. Depends what you're looking for, right? And that's often the mood space that you create between yourself and your space and where you're at and the song, and whether those two kind of do this. I think that's what I'd say to that. Some very funny Wiz Khalifa feature. He bodies Mike's part. And occasional bumps on the track list. He's got a feel good project here of love and some of the best production. So very interesting. I wouldn't personally spot production as a great feature in it, but I would just say it's clean because it's got this vibe. It's just authentic. It feels like he's really walking and he's really throwing it in his headset and he really does want to wake up to it. He's got a piece on one of his tracks where he's got the alarm clock sounding and he's just being a kid. And if you watch the music videos, there's a layer of him just being stupid, like he's trying to make a shot on a court, a jump shot, and he just keeps bouncing it off the board, and obviously purposely so. So there's some of that stuff going on. All right, one last one, and you guys can run these too. Just go ahead and look for a review, and Google in review Michael Posner, and the album is Keep Going. An auditory diary, absolutely. And it goes through the tracks where he's initially in the very first track asking the listener to listen directly, hardest journey of his life. And then he reminds you constantly that he's kind of processing. Indulgent, you might say, or is it really just for him? And he's saying, hey, I'll let you come in, and I recognize some of you resonate and some of you won't. Up to you. Very interesting that he's that direct, though, to say, hey, if you don't got 52 minutes to listen, I respectfully, he says, request you don't. I thought that was interesting in a day and age where we want to just hit a playlist, and Spotify almost pushes us, right, to not listen to an album from cover to cover. Does he flex a little bit or flaunt? He does. He's got a little bit of ego. I would agree with that. And then the tracks themselves, I mean, he slowly will add layers, and it's true with piano, synth, electronic drum beat. Sometimes drum beat gets a little bit feeling like we're just dropping it in. It's mechanical, feels a little bit 90s techno when we're going to do that. I'm not sure if I'm always a big fan of it, but the trumpet is a beautiful layer, and it does have some sense of gospel. You'll have choirs coming in. That, for me, worked overall. For fun, we go to the 6th track, Pinsakeem. If you just want to have a little beat with a bright horn and a sense of just being stupid and fun and bebopping around, it gives you that. My sons and I will actually work out sometimes to this tape, which is funny because we've actually make jokes about it. Some of the lines are just ridiculous, meaning that they're so personalized that you could just say, hey, I can kind of riff off that. And we do at times just playfully so. That said, I think, for authenticity, I just give this marks for that. And I would say, as you think through what a mixtape is versus an album, as you grapple with your own reflection, as you listen to this album, I ask you to do 2 things really for this. One, possibly enter into the space of Posner, possibly arbitrate your take. You don't really need to. That's not the impetus. I think the greater impetus is, what does it mean to be authentic as an artist, to put out a mixtape that's really not necessarily just for the audience? Like, it's almost like they could go like this, like, hey, take it or leave it, or, and that, a little bit of whichever way you want it. And I think there's something beautiful, as we've talked about cultural literacy in this whole unit, to say at times you do write for your audience, at times you write for your audience within you. And you kind of birth a moment that somebody can come in and, like in an art gallery, and they come in that space and they're like, it's just right. It's just right. I'm supposed to stand in front of this piece of art. This is my piece. I think there's something cool about that. So, all right. Well, hopefully that was helpful, and we will catch you guys later.